Hello Booktube. For Tag Tuesday, I'm going to be doing the S tag, the latest in the continuing alphabet tag series created by Jim of Jim's Books, Reading, and Stuff. S is for science fiction. Which science fiction author have you read the most books by? I'm going to say Frank Herbert. I've read all but 2 of the Dune books, and so that would be about 4. And I don't think I've read 4 books or more by any other science fiction writer. Although hopefully I can correct that at some point or another. I have a bit of a unsettled relationship with Frank Herbert, which I will get to on Friday Reads, and perhaps at some point during the month of October, because there is a Dune read-along coming along in October. S is for Star Trek. Which is your favorite Star Trek series? Deep Space Nine. I grew up on The Next Generation, and it has a place in my heart. But I think ultimately Voyager and most certainly Deep Space Nine, I think, are the better 2 series. And with DS9 being much better than Voyager. So Deep Space Nine is a Star Trek series set on a space station, Deep Space Nine. Deep Space Nine was originally Terok Nor, a Cardassian mining station over in orbit over Bajor. When Bajor won its independence from the Cardassians, Bajor asked the Federation to come in and operate the station while the Bajoran provisional government sort of sorted itself out. In the premiere episode, a stable wormhole is discovered in the Bajoran system, and Deep Space Nine is moved into orbit around the wormhole as sort of a toll gate station thing, and the series progresses from there. I really liked Deep Space Nine because it had a lot of wonderful serialized storytelling that I quite enjoy in my television. Previously to this, Star Trek had been mostly episodic, but with Deep Space Nine, Star Trek became increasingly more serialized, more arc-centric, and I really enjoyed that. Although I never really got into Enterprise, and I haven't gotten around to watching Discovery or Picard yet. S is for school. What is your favorite book with a school setting? This one stumped me quite a bit. Because initially I couldn't think of anything. And then I started thinking about the prompt some more and thinking about maybe what about not non-fiction but non-prose stories, and then I hit on, well, Toilet Bound Hanako-kun by Adalaro, which is a manga I just recently discovered this year and have really fallen in love with, even though I only have the 1 volume. Second volume is a pain in the butt to find. Although I'm going to check after this video and see if volume 2 is finally available. But Toilet Bound Hanako-kun is set in a incredibly haunted middle school, and is about a young student who finds herself embroiled in the supernatural shenanigans that go on at the school. I could also think of Naruto, whose first few chapters take place at his ninja school, and he's about to graduate and become a apprentice ninja, I guess you could say, Jinin. And so that could count. As far as fiction goes, or prose anyway, I'm like, there really isn't modern or contemporary fiction that really jumped out at me. But then I remembered A Tale for the Time Being by Ruth Ozeki, which is about the time one of the main characters is a young high school student in Japan going through some serious bullying that I quite like. So that could count. And then I also thought about maybe The Magicians by Lev Grossman, which is a novel I have mixed feelings for. I liked the break bills part, but once the story moves into the fillery part, I'm less interested in that. So yeah, so I think that my answer probably would be Taliban and Hanako-kun for now, but I'll list all of them down below when I do my books mentioned, assuming I remember, because there are quite a few. Next, S is for satire. Which is your favorite satirical novel? I really don't think I have one. Satire is not a genre I particularly care for. So I can't think off the top of my head any satirical novels, let alone ones I enjoyed. So we are returning to the log cabin. Apparently we were not rescued. You are in a log cabin with no internet and no Kindle. Or at least the Kindle has the following books. In the log cabin are 4 books. Scarlet Sins by Dan Cobain, haven't heard of that. The Sword of Kaigen by M.L. Wang, which I've heard quite a bit about, although I'm not entirely sure what it's about. The Accidental by Ali Smith, which I've never heard of, although I know who Ali Smith is. She did the seasonal books, like the Seasonal Quartet, or Seasons Quartet a few years ago. I tried the first one and didn't quite like it, but I've been wanting to have another shot of that and at some of her other work. So the Accidental's on here, so that's good. And City by Clifford D. Simak. Oh, which I think I've tried something by him. I don't know if it's City or something else. But I remember trying something by him and not particularly caring for it. So the questions for this prompt. Which book do you start reading? Which book will you give as a gift to a booktuber? And which booktuber? So I think I would start reading The Sword of Kaigen, because I have heard some good things about it. And the one I would give as a gift, I have no idea. I don't know. So it is a little cold in the cabin. Which book would you burn in the hearth for warmth? There's no central heat in there. Bah. I guess maybe Scarlet Sin, since this moment I don't know anything about it, so I'll just toss that one into the fire. And which would you leave behind for the next visitor? Again, I don't know. S is for Steinbeck. Which is your favorite Steinbeck novel? Well, I've only ever read one Steinbeck novel, and that's Grapes of Wrath, which I actually quite enjoyed. I don't have it in my collection anymore. I picked it up from a used bookstore in Austin, I think, is where I got it from. And I read it I think in high school, although it might have been in college, but I remember quite enjoying it. So, yeah, Grapes of Wrath. Although I would love to read more of Steinbeck's works. Maybe another collecting project at some point. S is for Sartre. Is Sartre or Sartre worth reading? Or Sartre? I don't know. I've never read him, so I can't personally give much in the way of judgment on that. S is for Shakespeare. Which is your favorite Shakespeare play? Titus Andronicus is a personal favorite of mine, but I would say largely on the strength of the Julie Taymor version from the late 90s. I love that movie. But I think I actually like Macbeth or The Tempest better. But I'll leave links. I'll mention all three. So it's a bit of a toss-up. What is the last Shakespeare play you saw performed at the theater? I've only ever seen one Shakespeare play. Well, that's parts of it, and that was The Tempest. So when I was briefly in San Francisco for graduate school, one of my professors mentioned that there was going to be a Shakespeare in the Park type performance of The Tempest at Golden Gate Park, which is this massive sort of nature preserve at the very sort of end of the peninsula that San Francisco's located, or where San Francisco is. And it's basically comes up with the Golden Gate, and it's used to be a former military base as well. So I decided to go, and I took the BART, ended up going to Daly City, and then I eventually found my way to where I was supposed to be, and then ended up walking through most of the Presidio and Golden Gate Park until I eventually found where the performance was. And then I just stayed maybe about 10 minutes because it was well into, I think, the third or fourth act by the time I got there. So I'm like, I'm just gonna go home. So I basically walked roughly back from where I came from, and eventually found a bus stop that I eventually figured out how to get back to where I was staying at the time. Not one of my most cherished memories from San Francisco, I can assure you of that. It was, yeah. S is for Stalin. Stalin was a monster, but does he have any redeeming qualities? No. S is for short story. What is your preferred length of fictional reading material? I think focusing on, well, the shorter end can be a bit nebulous. I would say as long as the story needs to be. But I do think some longer stories, particularly in fiction, I think can get tedious and bloated the longer they get. So I would say the 300 to 400, 500 at the most range. S is for subscribers. Not a prompt, but just thank you. I've just passed the 500 subscriber mark. Congratulations, Jim. Job well done. And on to the bonus prompts. S is for Scotland. What is your favorite book set in Scotland? I honestly don't think I have one. I mean, I'm drawing a complete blank. S is for supernatural. What is your favorite supernatural story? For this, I'm going to go with, because obviously I read a lot of fantasy, so practically all of fantasy could fit in here. But I'm going to go with maybe a bit more horror, a bit more contemporary supernatural. And for that, I'm going to go with The Devil Rides Out by Dennis Wheatley. It's a horror novel from the 1920s in which a group of friends rescues a member of the friend group from a magical occult society. And another member ends up falling in love with another initiate. I really enjoy it. I've read it a few times. The movie starring Christopher Lee and Charles Gray from the late 1960s is wonderful. And they're actually better than the book. Just FYI. S is for superhero. Who is your favorite superhero? So I'm going to go with two. One from Marvel, one from DC. I think I like my favorite Marvel superhero more than I do the DC superhero. But my favorite Marvel superhero is Wiccan, Billy Kaplan, from most notably the Young Avengers. He is the retro reincarnation, possibly demonic possession. It's weird and complicated and quite soap opera-ish. Son of the Scarlet Witch and the Vision. He is a reality warper of such immense power that he is the Demiurge, or a reincarnation of the Demiurge. Again, it's complicated and it really needs to be addressed, which unfortunately Wiccan, along with most of the Young Avengers, have never really gotten the attention, the long, glorious run of a comic book that they really deserve. I mean, we should be on 200-300 Young Avengers issues and not praying for crumbs every few years. I mean, it's been about 5 years since the last Young Avengers series, and it's just, it is incredibly frustrating. No, actually, it's been longer than that since the last Young Avengers series, but still, it is just, it's so frustrating. And I don't know if it's something to do with editorial, with no writers are really pitching enticing ideas for the Young Avengers, or for Wiccan and his now husband Hulkling, or Emperor Doric the Eighth, for like their own solo, or I guess you would call it a duo book or something. It's like they really need more, but yeah, it's one of the things of comic books. It's to be perpetually frustrated with the big publishers. My favorite superhero from DC, although Steve Donahue would say he's not a superhero because he does not have superpowers, is Tim Drake, the third Robin. And occasionally Red Robin. He is the Robin I grew up with, and I had quite a large number of his comic book series. Tim Drake's Robin is the only Robin to really have a long-running, successful solo comic book series. Dick Grayson did have Nightwing, but that was when he was Nightwing and not as Robin. So, yeah. And Tim Drake, much like Billy Kaplan, has not had the best few years. Basically, since New 52, Tim Drake has not really been as prominent as he should be. And that's quite frustrating. But again, being a fan of superhero comics, particularly the ones published by Marvel and DC, unless you happen to be a fan of like the big marquee characters who will never or very rarely be sent on vacation or sent to limbo or occasionally killed. I mean, and you won't have this frustration, but if you are a fan of less prominent characters, I mean, it is frustrating because these characters very rarely get the attention they deserve. And finally, after that little rant, as is for Scandinavian noir, have you tried this subgenre of crime fiction? No, I haven't. I think I watched one of the Girl with the Dragon Tattoo movies, but I've never read any Scandinavian noir. Although maybe I should. So hopefully other people who do this tag will have some pretty good recommendations for Scandinavian noir. Anyway, Booktube, that was the S tag. If you would like to do this tag, consider yourselves tagged. And I will see you tomorrow with, I'm not entirely sure what I want to do tomorrow. We'll see. And if I can't think of anything, I might just skip a day, and then on Thursday I will do some poetry readings, because I've been meaning to do Poetry Thursday and I have not. And then on Friday, of course, will be weekly reads, which will more than likely feature a bit of a Frank Herbert rant. But anyway, Booktube, until tomorrow at least, thank you, have a great afternoon, and stay safe.